You allow yourself to be distracted by the sheer opulence of the picnic. Crystal glasses, fine linen blanket, intricately woven basket, and then the clothes and the pendant he put on you. Where does he get these things from? It almost leaves you jealous. While you peer across the arrangement, Raphael even manages to retrieve a small guitar. With his long, slender fingers, he picks the snares and fine-tunes it. When the russet rogue frowns seriously and occupies himself with the small instrument, cradling in his arms, focusing on its tortured plinks, you notice just how dedicated and dashing he is. Whatever else is on display, however, your eye is consistently caught by the fox's rapier. Raphael has left it unsheathed in the scabbard. Oh, left it sheathed in the scabbard, with the silver upon the hard brown leather. A sword's guard sticks out from the sheath and is fashioned out in a fine golden filigree that domes around the head. The weapon makes you curious. It appears so delicate you can hardly believe it to be serviceable in battle. You ask Raphael if such a small weapon ever managed to impress anyone. He snaps one of the snares in shock and draws a long face. It is not a thin, flimsy fange, something French. I wish Katie were in the call. He bulks his unique accent and loses his cool for a moment. I'll have you know, it's perfectly average compared to those of others. Okay. He defends himself with an excitable hand gesture. There's a moment of awkward silence when you realize the young man places more pride in his sword than you thought. However, Raphael recollects himself with a smile and chuckles at himself like he's been had by someone who just doesn't understand. No, my lady, this is a man's weapon in every definition of the word. He beams and picks it up, pulling the blade from the sheath with a cold iron swish. Notice how its long, hard length stands tall and fierce upon a sturdy hilt designed for deep thrusts. Yeah, this is totally not an innuendo of any kind, right? Scrolling, or at least I think I'm scrolling. So much lag. Holding it up, it indeed gleams sensually in the sun. However, Raphael points downwards directly at you, carefully tracing the point across your outfit. You can feel the cool edge glide across you. Notice the roving tip, how she searches for an opening upon a quivering body's wavering guard. When Raphael places the point between your breasts, you cannot help but stare at the steely needle with fascination. Driven by long steel, the sharp tip feels heavy enough to slide into your flesh in a single thrust. The feeling is only stronger for wearing an outfit such as yours, leaving your body so acutely vulnerable against the outside world. You stand corrected. There is something very intimidating about it. Could I learn to use it? You ask Raphael, who then begins to snicker in his fist and snorts unseemly. When you don't flinch and just stare at him in earnest, the fox looks up in surprise. Oh, you are serious about that, he remarks and snaps out of it by adopting the coy frown of a typical wileful fox. While you ask him if he thinks that's weird, the vulpine rogue says, "Not at all, mademoiselle. In fact, I am of the opinion that every woman of your remarkable beauty should know how to defend herself. Perish the thought of having you to relinquish your womanhood to anything other than a true gentleman, or having it ravished by beast instead. If you must fight, I cannot think of a weapon more suited for a woman than the rapier. I would be honored to teach you." Shall we? He jumps to his feet and extends his arm. You ask him if you shouldn't be wearing armor instead of wafer-thin silk body stocking. Oh, wafer-thin silk body stockings. He laughs. I assure you, for the rapier, you are dressed perfectly. The two of you amble over to a mossy field. Raphael is up and waving his rapier about playfully, grazing the tip through the flora and even slashing a wasp. You can't seem to spot the insect flying around after he does that. When you reach the center of the field, however, Raphael throws his weapon to the ground with temperament and tells you to prepare. Aren't we going to use the weapon? You ask him, causing him to smirk. So eager, he snarls, excited. Whatever happened to foreplay? You try to explain that this isn't what you meant, but the fox shakes his head. The sword is merely an extension of the rest of your body. The sharp edge is meaningless when the arm that aims it and the feet that drive it suffer from inferior technique. It is footwork. Observe, he exclaims, and motions you to keep your distance. For a moment, Raphael stands still, as though caught in a moment of intense preparation. The first thing Raphael does is to move his feet. He rapidly taps his boots down upon the moss below, while he holds both arms wide in the air like a bird of prey, as though working towards a moment of instant momentum. When the moment comes, the fox turns into a true dervish. He spins about, squats down to pick the rapier up, to pick up the rapier with the long steel in hand. He swerves and becomes only wider for it. The edge cleaves to the air until he draws it to a standstill and flicks the length around faster than you can follow it. He enacts a series of mock parries and dodges before extending the weapon forward with an outstretched hand and a straight spine. With the other arm far back, he adopts a posture of perfect poise. From the position, he suddenly retreats wildly. He jumps backwards with a frantic kick through the air and lands gracefully again. From there, he strides backwards contemptuously and swishes the sword about in wide, elegant arcs, like he's mocking an invisible opponent from whom he's just escaped into, thinking both maneuvers were perfectly calculated through sheer grace. Concentrating hard and starting another maneuver, the fox then closes his eyes. The mane on his snout relaxes when he holds the chin of his triangular head to his chest and centers his balance. To carry the sword around his body in a series of wide sweeps, swiveling on his foot exactly 3 times. He only ends the movement by weaving an extra flick on his right foot exactly 3 times. My bad. To the side, and then putting the tip to the ground, striking a powerful pose. Raphael then throws the steel back towards his hip, twirls it about his side, and passes it underneath his arms in an elegant fashion, only to tuck it behind his back. A moment of serenity follows where the blade isn't even used. With the subtle movement of the fingers of an unpraised hand to a rhythm known only to the fox, he twirls the unburdened hand across his face while staring at you with a smile that couldn't possibly be any more cocksure. You're relieved. For a moment, though it had vanished after such a deserving display. You thought it had vanished, I'm assuming. He deeply enjoys his little performance, knowing damn well it must be impressive. All of this before he suddenly falls into the last of his repertoire. Drifting lazily towards one foot, he finishes strongly with another series of powerful pirouettes, that take him across the entire field within a dozen steps. Raphael himself becomes the center, calm in his own whirlwind of cleaving cuts. When he veers back into a straight line again, the sight is glorious. Raphael's beautiful long tail is still caught up in the wake of the spin, while his eager blade is already forging ahead in another direction. The 2 tips are exactly one moment behind one another, or one moment behind and 1 moment ahead of anything the fox does, like the trailing red shadow and the blurred iron meridian before you. He throws the momentum forward until the blade swerves around its forward axis while he hops about on excited dancing feet. With a beautiful simple thrust, he then simply pierces the rapier forward in a vigorous straight line. It puts all that strength and passion into an idle plunge away from you, dissipating into the thin air around swiftly trembling steel. For a moment, you wish such splendid force and elegant might have been reserved for you instead, such powerful movements, broken by moments of such form and calm. Raphael has the energy to manage a theatrical flourish. He swerves his feet about, moves his hands with temperament to strike a few poses before he puts his hand on the hip of his one straight leg and raises his sword into the air with victorious bravado. Footwork, he proclaims. Join, join me, my fine Fay, and I'll teach you to dance, he states while discarding the blade. Dance, you mumble with a smile, walking up to him and taking him by his hand. Wow, this is a long piece of text. Dance, he snarls, certain, wrapping his paw around your waist and pulling you close to him. Raphael tries to lead you off into a slow tango, but obviously overestimates the amount of nimbleness of your own feet. I'm assuming it's typo. Possess. You quickly rectify this by tripping over his boots and stepping on his toes. Each time provokes a little yelp from the fox, who soon realizes he has his work cut out for him. Whatever Raphael is, he does not give up easy, and you soon dance the morning away on top his tortured toes. In the end, you're forced to stop practice at Raphael's urging, barely even developing a sense for rhythm. You're simply not fast enough to keep up with the fox. Meanwhile, the poor fox has taken off his boots and seated himself on a nearby boulder, where he tries to rub the feeling back into his sensitive feet. You can't help but smile at your own bungling and feel sorry for the daunting amount of time and effort Raphael needed to put into you with so little to show for it. With you in hand, the otherwise delicate dancer slowed down into a broken mess. You are determined to try and get better at it, though. I was very impressed by your earlier show, you walk over and reassure him. Raphael looked somewhat discouraged. That was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. Do you really think I could ever master that much elegance and refinement, Mr. Fox? You chime appreciatively, running a teasing finger down his neck. Smile returns for him. Raphael, he burrs, and for someone like you, I'd gladly suffer 1,000 broken tails at once, he boasts. I will teach you grace becoming of your beauty yet. Again, he stands up, an arm with renewed energy. The fox is a thief of more than just gems. It's the concept of time vanishes around him, and before you know it, his antics have entertained you for nearly the entire early morning. Raphael is an amazing time sink. You notice how late it is, by the way, more light peeking over the forest tree line. You should return to the portal. It is not difficult to part with the fox, however. Only now do you notice how much more anxious and guarded he has become with the increase of light, frequently looking over his shoulder. When you tell him you should be going, the young man smiles relieved. Are you sure, senorita? In your presence, I would gladly spend an eternity. You know he's just keeping up appearances and making you feel welcome, however. When you smile and assure him that you must be getting back, Raphael declares his regret one more time before literally scrambling to get away from the meadow, hastily cleaning up the picnic. He doesn't even bother to put things back in the basket. He just takes the four corners of the blanket and folds it into a bag slung over his shoulder. A bit perturbed, you look after him as he slips into the tree line. However, before he vanishes, the fox gives you a wink and a bow. My lady, it has been a true delight, and it would be my great fortune if you'd allow me to see you again. He seems so hasty that you begin to question it, but your doubt is taken away as the fox takes the time to stare patiently at you from the forest edge. How could I resist when you're dressed and made so gorgeously, he smiles, referring to your elegant red suit. A minute of silence follows, and just when it's been long enough to reassure you, he throws you something and slips away and vanishes. You catch the object. He has returned the priceless ruby pendant. You recollect it yourself and head back to camp. So, yeah, that's the Raphael thing. I thought it would actually consume some time, but it's only 6 in the morning. So, yeah, I hope you all have a nice day.